Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today. You are engaging with a new episode of Inspired, a special episode of Inspired with the wonderful Rob Harris, who sits to my left. And today we're going to be talking about how you can, inception there. Um, we can talk about how you can carve your audience and your niche on LinkedIn. This is something that kind of comes up through inspired content quite regularly around what's the best way to maybe position your personal brand or how you want to communicate and how you want to be known on the platform. And as we know, in 2023, it's never been more important to have an active LinkedIn presence. So we have a slightly different setup for this live because it is a special. So we have Rob here. We have the camera here. Hello, not on my laptop. We have a laptop just here that we're going to refer to. So if you see us looking that way, that is why. We also have the wonderful Millie who sat behind orchestrating everything. So thank you very much. Before we get started, I'm going to dive into some housekeeping. So very basic, boring housekeeping, but the session is scoped in for an hour. It might not take that long, but it will be in that kind of ballpark. If you have any questions for Rob or myself, please do pop them in the comment section on the live stream feed. If we don't see them, I do apologize. There is sometimes a small delay between your questions coming through and us being able to see them on the software, but we will do our utmost to answer any of your questions. Similarly, please submit any feedback you have on this live stream session. If you think there's ways that we can improve it, I'm always interested to hear. And that also carries through if you're watching this on demand, which I'm sure some of you will be. But that is the boring housekeeping out the way. I guess the next thing to do, and most importantly, is to say hello to Rob and allow him to introduce himself. Hello, Rob.
Hello, Chris. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I can't believe this is our first webinar with yourself.
I know.
It's been some time since I was last on the mic. But yeah, I'm Rob. I am the MD of Better Webs. I've got over 8 years of web development experience. And a bit about me, I am an avid cricket fan, more around my local team in Canterbury, more of the 2020 games, the Vitality Blast. I like playing golf. We've not played golf this year.
No, we haven't. That's
yeah.
hopefully on the cards, though.
Yeah, hopefully, if the weather holds up. And I am an avid Formula One fan, mainly Lando Norris and obviously Lewis Hamilton. So yeah, that's a bit about me. And undisputed fantasy football champion. I think I've played it for about 12 years, maybe 13 years now. This might be my 13th year.
Really?
Yeah, sometime. I love it. Like, just it's got a lot difficult in these most recent years, and there's a lot of more people on it, so it's kind of tough. I did have a good season last season. I think I got 53,000 in the whole thing, which is
really good. He is underselling how good he is at fantasy football. So ever since I've been at Finally, every year we have an internal league, and every year Rob wins. So we're at the point now we may as well just PayPal him the money directly, to be honest.
Not every year, but the majority of years.
Yeah, he's being modest. But no, I agree with you. It's I mean, I didn't even realize until about 3 years ago that you can actually make a weekly transfer. So my knowledge has grown a lot. So I'm very happy about that.
You did come second last year.
I did come second. I did. Slowly improving. Thank you, YouTube.
The secret's out now.
Right. Perfect. Okay. Lovely stuff. So I guess without further ado, we should probably jump into this one and let's talk about today's agenda. So the special is all around carving your niche on LinkedIn. We're also going to have a look at Rob's website development agency, Better Webs. And as part of this session, we're going to talk around really the kind of the building blocks or the frameworks of how you can position yourself successfully on LinkedIn. And we're going to use Rob's journey as an example of that and allow him to talk around his use of LinkedIn. Because if you don't already follow Rob, you'll know, you won't know, but you will know soon that his growth has been fantastic. His posts regularly capture thousands of impressions and engagements. He's also been able to convert leads through his LinkedIn content. And he's been able to establish himself as an authority in this space, particularly around the website development and web utilization and HubSpot, some of his kind of key messages that he communicates. So we're going to tap into all of those throughout the session, starting with how to define your message pillars. We'll then look at how to target your ideal customer. From then, we'll look at how we can use content to communicate those themes. And then we'll move through to turning engagement into action. And that's kind of like, I guess, the funnel of how we're going to use LinkedIn successfully for your niche. So we're going to first start with defining your message pillars. So what we essentially mean by this is like, what do you want to be known for? When you're creating a personal brand, one of the fundamental things you need to do is establish why your personal brand exists. So we're going to allow Rob to talk a little bit about kind of what are the messages that you wanted to communicate onto LinkedIn and why were they important to you?
So I probably started posting on LinkedIn about, I want to say about 2 years ago. Back then, the organic reach was a lot higher than it is today. And when I first started, I struggled to kind of finding my niche. I know, obviously, I wanted to post about website content, but I always felt that the stuff that I would like to post would be too technical for the average audience. So I would have niched right down for someone. It was too technical for them and it would
Mhm.
just gone straight over the head. So I kind of changed that approach. And back then there was like very little website content posted on LinkedIn at all. So it's difficult to know what sort of content to post. Um, but I made it very top level for anyone to be able to understand it. Pulled in some posts around SEO content, not just because I'm a web developer, not just like, oh, this is HTML and uh, like the insights
Yeah, yeah.
of how websites built, more around the strategy and how to get it ranking, and just tips and tricks around that kind of thing. Um, so that's how it started. Really, it was difficult because there was very few of us, but now there's like loads of people doing the same content that as I do, so it's tougher because you got to compete with all those people. So yeah, that's how I started, and it just took off from there. Really.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point as well. With your personal brand, the likelihood of you communicating something that is 100% original is slim. LinkedIn is growing fiercely with people creating content. And as Rob said, when he started, he was maybe among the few, and now there are many. If you go through Rob's content, there are many themes that you will see that kind of repeat themselves, and that's very important because establishing that sense of what people can expect from your content and from your messaging is essentially how you start building the following. And that is your messaging pillars essentially are designed to build authority. And Rob's done that very successfully by showing his knowledge base around website design and web development, ultimately forming partnerships, which is fundamentally why we use LinkedIn, isn't it? Really, we want to meet
Yeah.
people, we want to connect,
Hmm.
and hopefully that leads to something prosperous business wise, and starting conversations. And I mean, you're big on conversations on LinkedIn. You're a big commenter. Do you think? Did you find sometimes that actually like more engagement comes to your posts through regular commenting, or do you find that it's just a way to keep connections and keep conversations going?
No, you've got to comment. Recently I've been lacking commenting. I'm sure everyone's guilty of that because it's just a time aspect to
Mhm.
be constantly on there, engaging with the community. You have your favorite group of people that you hang out with in like interact with their content,
Mhm.
and they like comment on your content to help each other out and sort of build that community around content. And with commenting on content, obviously the algorithm likes it, so it puts it out to more people. So you've got to generate those contents on how you form your post as well. So like ask questions. If someone comments something, then ask them a question back, just to keep
Yeah.
the interaction going as much as possible, really.
Yeah, absolutely. That's like we've said before and inspired that like a lot of content actually comes from the comment section as well, so that
Mhm.
you can really learn about what maybe your audience wants to talk about or is expecting to hear from you as well. That comes from that comment section. So it's a really good source of like inspiration and resource for your posts. So thinking about your message pillars. So imagine now that you have some ideas of things that you want to communicate or what you want to be known for. It's then thinking about how do you start targeting your ideal customer? Because as Rob mentioned earlier, if he had gone really heavily down a technical aspect of website development, he potentially would have alienated too many people. So it's finding that balance between who you want to talk to and the types of information you want to share with them. So probably the best way, and the way that I think most people would expect, is ultimately to think about what are the problems or the issues that your customers are facing, and how do you provide a solution or a tangible way to support and help alleviate that pain. So I've got a couple of examples here of Rob's. So if you look at Rob's content, one of the things that really stands out is people who have websites that are either like outdated. So maybe they're just not fit for purpose in today's marketplace. Perhaps it's people who physically just do not have the time or the resource to give their website the attention that it needs, the maintenance, the updates, the management. Or maybe actually it's websites, which is a common thing, and I know you talk about quite passionately about, is that websites that lead with design rather than with action. Maybe you want to expand a little bit about what you mean in terms of like websites that are designed and not really fit for purpose.
So a lot of people, when they look at their website, they're not happy with it purely on a design basis. All they can see is, oh, doesn't look great. We need an update. There's a lot more to a website than just how it looks. The biggest factor in that is content. Like, you've got to get your messaging right to grip the visitors landing on your page. They say a visitor, you've only got 10 seconds to grab someone's attention to keep them on your website to navigate through further pages down in your navigation. So your messaging is far more important than how it looks, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Also, you've got SEO on the back of that. It doesn't rank as well just from appearance. It's more what content is written out on that page, and that's how Google ranks your website.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's still aspects of good design, but to have loads of animations all over the place isn't the be all and end all. A simple, good looking static site is perfect for what you need. The content sort of drives the engagement, and obviously case studies and testimonials all helps with that. So yeah, it's not just don't think just about design. You've got to take everything into account.
Yeah. So would you say then, to some degree, websites in this kind of area that fail is because they prioritize that kind of style over the substance?
Yeah, so I would say the trend, probably about 5 years ago, the trend was, it's got to look good. So a lot of agency style websites used to have the burger menu on the desktop site. They used to like change the cursor icon. Funky. Another example would be in the hero banner, the words would like change, kind of like those aesthetically good looking design elements on your website.
Yeah.
But in theory, it doesn't work, because with burger menu, for example, people just want to see the menu as it is. They don't want to then click a burger menu for it to be hidden.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of changed in this day and age.
Yeah. And I think as well, as someone myself who's not a web developer, I think something that's very interesting about this and what's really apparent in Rob's content is he communicates very often around how you can make your website essentially like optimized for a user. And like, surely like the best way of doing that is to make it simple for them to navigate. So if you've got
Yeah.
lots of like, like big hero banners or like changing typography or heavy image files that make the thing load really slowly or whatever, what's actually on the website might be brilliant, but if it's hard for them to get to or it's hard for them to navigate, it doesn't really matter what's on the website.
No, and if it loads really slowly, then they're gonna not even
Just jump ship.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah.
So yeah, so like there's some kind of examples of like some of the problems that Rob's customers face. So taking that into consideration, what does that mean? Well, if you understand who your target customers are and ultimately the things that they're struggling with, then it gives you an opportunity to establish the need for your expertise. And I think that's, for me, probably one of the most important things, and why, using Rob as the case study here, why he has been successful is because he's demonstrated a need for his information and his insight on something to help people achieve what they want to achieve. It also helps making your content relevant, which I think is probably, I would say, one of the hardest things to do consistently. Because if you write content and you produce videos, you produce blogs, you produce social posts, and maybe they don't reap the rewards that you want, they don't maybe get the engagement, then you find yourself in that kind of situation like, is this the right content? And there is that battle of like, what content resonates best with your audience. So having an understanding of who your target is will help make your content feel more relevant. And ultimately, having those target customers will enable you to increase lead gen opportunities. And Rob has successfully used LinkedIn to generate leads. So this stuff does work. People have come to his content, they found it insightful, they've wanted to learn more. So having that in your mind about who you're talking to and how you're helping them is essentially the foundation of what makes good content. And that's what we're going to come on to here. So how do we communicate using content? So we know what we want to talk about. We know who we want to talk to. So how do we start formalizing this in posts that achieve those two things? So on the slides, we've got a few grabs of some of Rob's most successful posts. He's got a broad church of content. I guess I'll just let you talk through some of them, Rob. So obviously the post we've got here is the one that you posted recently that did very, very well. Was a typical website visit in 2023. So kind of, what was your thought process behind that post? Like, what made you want to write it? Because it obviously resonated with a lot of people.
I think it just hits a lot of people because everyone visits a website, and it's quite, these days you got to have a cookie banner. So that's kind of one of the points that I highlighted. There's lots of marketing websites that have pop-ups that I like to use. So it's just touching on the typical website that you would land on and sort of putting that in a step-by-step basis in a humorous way, which, by how it performed recently, touched a lot of people because they could resonate with it. So
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I think you've knocked the nail on the head. It's that the resonating with someone because they can relate to it.
Yeah.
And like, relatability is something that funnels through a lot of great content, and you'll see it through Rob's. I really love on this post as well how kind of points 10 and 11 like give up and open a competitor's website. I feel like that really effectively hammers home a problem, doesn't it? It's kind of like, so not only is it really difficult for someone to use the website, they then get to the point, oh, for Christ's sake, I'm just going to go elsewhere. And that's
But
what,
it is true.
yeah.
Like, although it's a funny post, it is true. And that is the reality of websites these days. So
Yeah.
take it as you would, really.
And I mean, let's say, like, you can just see from this grab that it got 184 comments, and I'm sure since this grab it's got more than that. What did you find with some of like the response to that? Was it people just really showing how they related to it, or did anyone give any like explain how they're suffering with dealing with this sort of thing? Or
Yeah, more like, yeah, relation to
Mhm.
it. Most of it was about talking about cookie banners.
Yeah.
A lot of people find them frustrating, which they are, and a bit of a nuisance. So yeah, it was mainly around the cookie banner
Mm,
stuff that got quite a bit of comments,
mm.
and the pricing as well. People don't show pricing as much as they should. I saw somebody did a post yesterday about pricing page, which it was in their main navigation, but it didn't actually, the page itself didn't actually display pricing, just talks about sort of, oh, we can do this, we can do that, not actually give a price whatsoever. So yeah, it's
Just like super vague.
yeah,
We
very
are
frustrating.
competitively priced. Yeah,
Yeah.
cool, sure. Uh, but no, I think that's a really good example, and obviously you can see from the engagement that post generated that it hit home with a lot of people, whether you are explicitly in Rob's target audience or not. As Rob said, everyone visits a website, and everyone's had to navigate an annoying cookie banner or allow pop-ups or allow notification button or all of those kind of things that essentially create additional barriers to entry for you to be able to get to what you want to get to. There's a couple of other examples on here as well. So we've got, again, another example of humor. Rob's here, building for the web is 20% writing code and 80% trying to get it working on Safari. Again, like really tapping into that relatability factor. That resonated with a lot of people as well. I got a few more on another slide. Something I wanted to talk to you about, Rob, was your comparison posts. When you start following Rob, if you don't already, you'll notice that a lot of his content uses a comparison theme structure, and I think it's very effective. And you can see from the engagements that it obviously is effective, where he essentially compares between something that's good or bad, or something that is not optimized and is optimized. What was it about this type of this kind of content that made you want to like write in this way? And like, what do you think this is just a way to easily convey information to your audience?
Yeah, so with writing so many posts, these posts perform the best, I would
Mhm,
say, using lists or listicles, as people like to call them. But the comparison is, so I would take out things that typical person would do within the bad bit, and then suggest a better alternative.
mhm.
And just using that format makes it easy to read. So people would actually spend time, even though it's a short amount of time, reading it. Whereas if it was just a whole bunch of just copy
Mhm.
text, with not much spacing between the sentences, then people just quickly skip past that.
Yeah.
And using emojis as well helps, just to pulls out the difference between them. As you can see, the X's and the ticks.
Yeah.
I think that does help in some way.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
I agree. I also think as well, this writing in this kind of format, um, using those short sentences is obviously great in terms of keeping people's attention. But people, when they look at information, they don't naturally read it from top to bottom. They tend to look in the middle. So
mhm.
something like this, where you've got the kind of bad website hero section, then good website hero section, or skip this and optimize this, they might default look at the bottom thing first, like in terms of lasering in on something. And I think the way that you've structured these posts is probably as important as what they say. We've mentioned on Inspire before the importance of structure and how structuring content is essentially optimizing content, just like SEO optimizes content that exists on a web page. Um, in all your time of like kind of posting on LinkedIn, Rob, because so you've been doing it now for about 2 years, but you're a prolific poster. You post pretty much every day. Um, what like motivates you to keep doing it? Like what like because there are always times, right, where your content maybe doesn't perform as well as you'd hope, or
Yeah.
there's times where maybe you might be in a bit of a like a creative lull. Like what makes you want to do it? Like what keeps you motivated?
It's just, I think other people keep me motivated as well, because I think there's been a couple of like new people emerge within my niche
Mhm.
that are doing really well, and it's just keeping yourself relevant.
Okay.
Um,
So it's that kind of like competitive thing into a
yeah,
group.
there is
Yeah.
competitive thing, and I set myself a goal this year to post consistently. Last year, I did make it consistent, and I like would plan out my week's posts in advance. Some weeks, it's just having a goal and sticking to it,
Yeah.
really.
And do
Um,
you still do that? Do you write ahead of time, or do you write daily, or yeah, both?
the past few months it's just been daily,
Yeah.
um, and a lot of it would be repurposing old posts,
Hmm.
because that's like the quickest way for me to get something out.
Yep.
Um, some days obviously have something completely new to post. If I see something that someone else has posted, I'll go, "Oh, that's an idea for a post that I can do," and reframe it
Yeah.
in using website development
That's like the
area.
angle. Yeah.
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 So yeah.
Yeah, I find, I mean, it might just be me personally, but like whenever you kind of like tell people about how to use social media effectively, one of the first things that people suggest is having like a calendar or like having a plan of like how
Mm.
regularly you should post and like having it pre-written. I've personally really struggled with that. Like I am much better at writing something on the day and I guess to a degree like seeing how it goes, like rather than I sometimes write in advance, but not that often. Like most of the time I don't.
I used to. So like last year, I must have gone through about 3 months of, I would plan. I think some weeks I had like 2 weeks posts in
Oh, okay.
advance, or I would leave. So I'd do like Monday to Wednesday of posts scheduled in, but I'd leave 2 days just for ad hoc postings, because if something happened,
Yep.
I would, if I and every slot was filled for the day, I would then have to rearrange it to post something. So I left some open to sort of have that movement of, because stuff happens, like something in the news or some new like website launch, something that can easily change. So it's being reactive on that. Unlike this podcast, for example, if we only knew about it last week, it's fresh. So like, okay, I've got to post that today. So yeah, those sorts of things.
Nice. Yeah, I love that. So on the next slide, then we kind of got like a little bit of a summary. So using content to communicate, and these are the things that I would say that like Rob's content does very well. The first is expertise and insights. So I say like establishing a need for your voice and the value that you can provide people in your insight. Your personality and your humor, which you've seen on some of the examples, comes through. And I think humor is a great tool and you can apply it to any type of information. It doesn't matter if your information is to a degree technical because you still have personality. The next is solutions to customer pain. So again, that could be through relatability. That could be through offering a lead generating piece, maybe like a brochure or a white paper. Proof points and experience. That's kind of actually like a doubling down on what you're telling people. And we're going to talk a little bit about that shortly. And your position and the value you provide. And I think this is, for me, like the main ethos of a personal brand. It's knowing what you want your personal brand to be, like believing in it, and creating content that showcases your position. And as Rob said, there might be more people now in his niche who are talking to the same people and vying for the same attention, but none of them are Rob. They might sound similar, but they're not you. And I think that's an important commodity. Okay, cool. So our fourth point then is how do we turn engagement into action? So we've already spoken about the fact that Rob's posts generate a lot of impressions. The one that we showed, the typical website view, got into the 30 odd thousands, probably more. So you've captured someone's attention successfully with your content. How do you capitalize on it? What would you say, Rob, if someone maybe started to show a degree of interest in maybe learning more about you? What do you think is a good route to get them talking more? Is it a DM job? Is it keep it in the comment section? Is it an email? Is it?
I tend to keep it in the comment section, or depends who it is really. Sometimes it goes in the DMs, but generally comment section. Depends what they are looking for.
Okay.
If they reach out to me, then yeah, they would probably DM me, and that conversation would carry on within there. But if it's something on a post, I tend to keep it within that post because then that gets me more reach. And I like to keep myself transparent, so
yeah, I like that. And that's a good thing as well. I've before in the post, in the past, not the post, have like given someone access to some of my other posts in DMs. So I've been like, oh, if I saw you like interested in this one, you might like this or whatever, just to kind of maintain, as you said, like the engagement and the reach on your content rather than just solely veering away from it and it suddenly becoming transactional. But there are ways around how you can start making your engagement more action orientated. And we've got a few examples on the slide. So the first is proof points, which we mentioned earlier in the content section. And something that Rob does and has done in the past is use case study content and convert it into essentially social posting. I really like these, Rob. So like where you kind of, this one here, for example, we increased Kingsby's traffic by 59% versus the previous year. But how did we do it? So very, again, establishes the achievement. Cool. Did that. Fantastic. All right. Brilliant. Now, what does that actually mean? When you like structure these posts, like, is that the thought process behind it? Is it kind of like grab the attention in the opening line, then give them the detail, or is it kind of reveal the end at the beginning? Like, do you know what I mean? Like you tell them the juicy bit first and then why?
Yeah. So the first, 2 lines of that is the hook.
Yeah.
It's there worded in that way to entice them in, for them to click the see more button, so they can read the rest of the content. Without that, people would just skip past it, really. So it's, create your post. The hook's the most important thing to get the engagement on your post. So that one was well thought out.
Yeah, definitely. On the next slide as well, we've got a couple more examples. So this is kind of also shows the consistency element, and this is something really important in good content. So the previous one, Rob kind of established what they achieved, and then how do we do it? On these ones, we built Forecast 100 plus page website in just 2 weeks. How did we do it? And we increased Andrew James' sales by 46% within the first year. But how did we do it? So you've kind of retained that structure. Was that because maybe the first time around you did it, it was really successful, or is it just to keep up that consistency?
I'd say it was successful, and it's sort of, so those are taking a stat point from the list that you see below. So it's just taken one that would get the most attention.
Yeah.
So like 100-page website in just 2 weeks. Someone that I think, wow, that's impressive. How did you do that? So it's just enticing them in with some stats that
Yeah, I love that.
seem impressive.
They are impressive, but I think what's also really interesting about this content, which if you've previously watched Inspired, you might notice, particularly on the Andrew James post, where the section within 12 months we achieved : those stats are text stamp. They're stacked text wise, so they are in a descending list, and that's a really good way to maintain someone's eye and someone's interest in the way that you structure your copy, as we've previously discussed. Do you take that into consideration now when you write content? Do you try and make it like with text, make it stack or make it look as pleasing as possible as well as good?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I do as well.
So yeah, well, you can see in that example, the left one, it's not stats are like remove legacy codes is the shorter one, whereas on the right, it's the list
descending.
Yeah,
It's really pleasing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
So do you ever find yourself sometimes trying to add in an extra word just to make the line fit longer? I do.
No.
Sometimes I've got like a sentence and I'm like, oh, it just needs to be like one word longer. So then it's obviously can go at the bottom and it's the longest sentence, but maybe I'm just anal. And then we've got comment CTAs. And this is something I wanted to talk to you about because there's always conversations around posts with links on LinkedIn. Like, do they get penalized by the algorithm? Is it better to post a link in the comment section or in the description box? This post here from Rob, where he's promoting a webinar, the call to action here is not necessarily about getting the link or clicking on the link. He's written comment CRM if I'll see you there in the chat or you want the link to join. So here you're using the comment section really as a lead generating tool, aren't you?
Yeah. So this is I would say posting links on LinkedIn, whether it's in your post or in comments, does penalize your reach. So this is a way to not use a link within the post itself and then to get comments quite easily in a quick, easy way.
It's also quite a good way to establish interest, right? Isn't it?
Yeah.
Rather than just the because I'm guilty of it. Rather than just the assumption that people want to actually click on your thing, by doing this, you're actually allowing them to qualify themselves, aren't you?
Yeah, and you don't know who's clicking on that link. If you had a link on your post, whereas if they left a comment, you can see who they are and who's actually interested within the content that you're providing. So
yeah, I think this is a very simple one to do, but probably a very effective one. And that's a great point. It enables you to actually see who that person is. And especially then if you're taking them through to a place where you're going to maybe capture their data and information, you can enroll them into email nurturing or whatever your following steps are. It's a very good way to be able to see essentially from your post who you've brought to that party, right? Who you've qualified, which I think is great. And the next one, which we've spoken about on Inspire before, is LinkedIn recommendations. And I think recommendations are a bit overlooked because sometimes people just don't get that far down the profile. Like they just don't scroll that far down to find the recommendation section. But I feel like a recommendation is one of the best ways to actually prove that you can do something because someone else has to say it, like rather than you maybe saying, oh, I did this and this is how I did it, or this is this is some fantastic work that we produced. Actually having a customer or a client advocate for your skills is it's why people trust influencers, right? Because they believe their opinions more than a brand. So what do you think? Do you think recommendations are important?
Yeah, 100%. It's like having testimonials on your website, where it's just LinkedIn's version of that. I think I could do with a couple more recommendations, and I think they are difficult to get. You got to badger some people to go, can you leave me a recommendation? But it's a good way of showing social proof that you can actually do what you're saying that you can do.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're a nice way as well to kind of continue forging that kind of community aspect on LinkedIn as well. Like if you have someone who's like-minded or someone who's used your services and they want to advocate for your services, that's, as Rob said, a great piece of social proof. But it's also living. It stays on your content, it stays on your profile. It's not sometimes like posts that over time they start to disappear in the ether. This is something that has like a stamp and it retains on your profile. Amazing. So I guess now then let's have a chat about Better. So we introduced Rob, obviously, as Rob is the MD of Better Webs. So I've got a couple of questions about it, Duke, because it's really exciting. So I guess, like, firstly, why was it created? Like, what was for you like the need or the vision to get Better Webs off the ground?
So I think there's just a gap in the market, and it was sort of my next step in my career, I guess, starting my own agency. I didn't from doing HubSpot websites, so we do HubSpot websites only, HubSpot website agency. Um, I didn't want to go down the WordPress route, like, and be another web agency that does WordPress website. There's so many out there. Instead, I wanted to pick a software, which is HubSpot, and we're in the UK, so there's not many. We're quite niche in that area, which has helped. Like my first client found me on LinkedIn because he was looking for a HubSpot web developer. So I appeared because there's so few of us. I appeared quite highly on the search, so that's how he found me. So yeah, that's why it was created, and it was something that I've been passionate to do for some time. So yeah, that's where it all began, really.
Awesome. I guess it's a slightly leading question, but like, what do you think makes a better website better? Like, what do you think is about the websites that you create that are special or really helpful to a customer?
Because they're built by me. No, it's just obviously my experience, and it's kind of what I say on my posts kind of gets put into the websites that I produce, and they're built on HubSpot. That is another bonus, which makes it a lot easier for people to update their website going forwards. Because a lot of our clients come to us saying, "Oh, I can't update on my website." They need to pay for developers to update it, whereas Better provides all the tools, and with it being on HubSpot, it makes it a lot easier for people to make page edits as however they like. Another thing would be that they all come with integrated with the HubSpot CRM. So we're more focused around the marketing side of a website, whereas like generating those leads for you and actually putting the website to work. It's not just a brochure. It's not just going to sit there and tell you information. It's actually going to drive conversions and leads to get inquiries to your business. So that's the main goal of the website, and that's our goal, to make them better so people see a return on their investment.
Yeah, amazing. I think that's really important. And I liked what you said as well around how using HubSpot like makes it more like, user friendly. Because one thing that's prevalent in Rob's content is people's current like inability to make those updates or make those changes to their websites. And so like by having a better website, they have the ability to actually have a degree of control over their site, right? And they can make those updates, they can make those amendments, and they can feel as though that their website like grows with their business. I feel like one thing I notice with a lot of websites is a lot of companies grow faster than their site does. Like they make changes or they add new things or they introduce new products or whatever, and their website just doesn't keep up that pace. So having the ability to make those updates and use a software that they understand, it's got to be a big bonus, I would imagine. Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. So I kind of put a couple of grabs in the next slides of some of the things from the Better website. Please do check it out and have a look after this session. But I guess the first one kind of takes us on to that point where like take back control of your website. So it will give you the building blocks you need to scale your website as you grow, saving you from high developer fees and make simple changes. Like, so that was that something that was really important to you, like enabling people to feel like they could have that control over how their site develops as they grow?
Yeah. So the aim is to not tie people in to constantly pay for developers.
Okay.
We provide them with their own custom theme, which has various modules that are easily stackable within the page itself. So a module would be a sliding banner, image and text, cards, like the column cards, FAQ section, something along those lines. We give all of those modules that are designs to fit their brand. And then from that, they have the ability to create unlimited pages going forward using that component kit. So they can, they've got the tools to build it themselves, whereas they don't have to come to a developer to create new pages later down the line.
Amazing. Yeah. I think that's really important as well. Like, one of the things that, like, I think a lot of people value is having a tool that allows them to do stuff for themselves rather than completely and utterly rely on other people.
Yeah.
Like, developers' time is precious. They're busy people. So enabling people to have that control over their website must just give them that, like, additional, like, freedom and confidence in what they have. I'm going to look at the last point here as well, to kind of generate higher quality leads, because you mentioned it earlier as like a real thing that makes your sites better. And I think something that I know you've spoken about quite passionately is like your website being like your number one salesperson, like the person who like never takes a sick day or anything like that.
Yeah.
Was that like, did you take that idea and thinking into better?
Yeah, so that's the goal really. We want to create websites that are generating leads and to get that return on investment for all our clients. Your website should be your best salesperson because, like you said, it doesn't take sick days. It's there, it's live all the time. Some companies are happy to spend 30, 40 grand for a new employee salesperson, for example, which would just be for a year's salary, whereas they're reluctant to spend 15 grand on a new website that is going to last you for 3 years and over, maybe even 4. So it's like way up that.
Yeah.
And
That's such a good analogy as well, isn't it? Like, it's people are like that, they put like different feelings and different emotions on prices depending on what they're attached to. My old man always used the example that you would moan to the high hills if you had to replace a tire on your car that costs like 150 quid because you got a punctured tire, but your car then gets you to your job, which pays you X amount of salary. Or like, so when you actually factor it in, or a bed costs £1,000, but if you sleep on it for 8 years, it costs like 15p a night to have a bed. Like, it's a very cheap thing to have. I'm going to jump onto that as well, because I know you mentioned around pricing. So we've got a couple of examples here of some of the pricing. So straightforward pricing that's modular as your website, and some of the packages that better offer. So looking at the growth package, then, so yeah, you got it's £9,000. So you kind of make that example that you might pay someone 40k to make sales, or you could spend £10,000 and have a lead generating website. It is really, I think, something that can be done really well through your content is educating people on that comparison. You're very good at using the comparison and relatability, and I feel like that is a great way to get people maybe more comfortable talking about price and like seeing the value in price.
Yeah, so a lot of people, especially in the web agency world, dodge pricing because a website is so complex. Where like, how many pages have they got? What sort of design, the platform? So at Better, we sort of productized those. So we've got 3 products.
Yeah.
So it makes it easier for people to commit, and they can see the price clearly, what they're getting for that money. So
because it could easily be in one of those situations where it's the answer is it depends.
Yeah.
And everybody hates it depends, because no one knows what that means. So I agree. I think being able to be, one, transparent with pricing, but 2, actually have that framework that people can get an expectation of what their money gets them is like surely a better way to not only capture more leads, but also allow people to like suitably choose something for their use case, like what they need. So like, they might not need pro, but they might need growth,
and it enables people to self-qualify themselves without getting in touch. Because if you do hide your pricing, then someone has to reach out to you to find that pricing. Whereas if you just put it up front, people can make that decision without even contacting you. So as soon as they do contact you, they've self-qualified themselves.
Yeah, you know that they have the budget, or they're interested, or and that's a really, really good point. That's a great point. Okay, unreal. So I'm going to jump into a Q&A now. So if you do have any questions, please do let us know. We will stick around for a few modes, see if any come in. In the interim, what would you say, Rob? Thinking about your kind of like your LinkedIn journey in particular, what would you say are some of the like the best things that you've learned from like trials and error with content? Like, what do you think is maybe a good example of something you've learned that's been successful with content and something that's been much less successful? Sorry, I put you on the spot there.
Much less successful. No, I would say if your content doesn't perform how you expect it to, then don't be disheartened about it, because I've had pieces of content that I've repurposed or literally just copy and pasted from. I generally stick to like a 3-month limit.
Yeah.
Like if I'm reposting something, it's got to be older than 3 months. And so I've come across like, oh, this post didn't get many views last time. I'll post it, maybe tweak it a bit and post it again, and then get surprised like, oh, this has got really good reach now.
Yeah.
Like, what's changed? Like, nothing. The content could be exactly the same, but the reach is completely different. So don't get disheartened on if your post doesn't get the reach that you think it should. Maybe it's just not the right timing, or
Yeah. And as well, like, in that time, in 3 months, your audience has changed. Your audience has grown in size. So when you first posted it, there may have just not been enough of the right people there, whilst now there are more of them. I think that's a really good point. And who do you thinking you were saying earlier about kind of like there's now quite a lot of people who are like in your space talking about what you talk about. Have you got any people that you would like recommend? Like any people you really enjoy their content?
Yeah, so there's 2 originals that kind of started at the same time that I did. One would be Jeff Kabinski. He's in the US. He runs a web design agency. And the other one would be Sam Dunning, who is from UK. He runs Web Choice.
Okay.
He does great content. He's got his own podcast as well. So those
Amazing.
are the 2 people that I recommend.
Recommend following them. Okay, unreal. I'm just going to look to Mills. We've got any questions? Okay, no worries. If you guys are watching this on demand and you do have any questions or whatever, please feel free to give myself or Rob a message. Also, on next slide, if you haven't connected with Rob already on LinkedIn, please do so. His content is fantastic. You've seen some examples of it today. Posts very, very regularly, pretty much every day. There's loads you can learn on there about how to make a website better, no pun intended, but also, actually engage with his content and find his content very enjoyable, because even someone like myself who is not a web developer, I still find the relatability and the humor in Rob's content really apparent, and I really much like it. So would highly recommend you give him a follow if you don't already. And with that in mind, thank you ever so much for joining us. Really hope you found this session insightful. Thank you, Rob, for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure. And yes, if you have any questions for us in the interim, please do reach out to either of us. We're on LinkedIn regularly. We will get back to you. And as I said earlier, if you do have any feedback or suggestions about how we can improve this podcast and this live stream, please do let me know. But for now, we will let you go. So thank you very much and have a wonderful day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.